We can do that.
Yeah. You don't remember them?
It seems like I do. But
Did you believe he's 80?
Really? No.
Yeah, he's 80. I said, I'm 83.
Are you?
83 next month. I'll have been married 55 years.
Wow.
I told my wife coming in, I said, I've been writing a song. Did I mention that long ago? So I'm going to write that song.
I want to know what tune you're going to put that to. Good morning. I think it's time to get started here. And Jerry was just telling me about a new country and western song that he's got words for. He's just trying to figure out a tune. I don't know how well that will catch on, though.
No refunds, no returns. Yeah. And she didn't like that coming in.
Who let you in? Oh, yeah, that's all right.
Make sure we saw you.
Nah, you don't want to do that. It's good to see everybody here this morning. It's back. Sorry, if you weren't here last week, you missed having a good teacher. So, yeah, comments from the peanut gallery over here. But it is good to see everybody, and I certainly appreciate Anthony taking care of last week and so on. And as we continue our study in Genesis, we'll be in chapter 30. We're going to start just a quick. I got a couple of questions over the first part of it, but we'll be starting in like verse 14, chapter 30 of Genesis, verse 14. Hayes continues to make good recovery. He's been down there now for a week, about that, and we want to continue to remember that family. God's got Hayes, and I have to say this, and this is for me. But after the first day of asking God to take care of this little boy, day 2, I started asking, it's like, wait a minute, I've asked this same stuff yesterday, didn't I? So why am I praying for the same thing? Does God say that he hears me? I don't have to wear him out. So I started thanking God for the recovery because I knew that he had him. And that's my prayer. Continue to thank him for the recovery that he's making. And we're blessed to have that family. We're blessed by God in the way that he answers our prayer. And I hope that we understand. And so sorry at the loss of Allison's dad. And we were gone this past week. Seemed like there were so many things that were going on. And we were out of town. But I enjoyed last weekend because we got to keep our little granddaughter by ourselves for a day or so there. And I finally got her to where she would come to me. I figured out the way to a woman's heart. I took her in the kitchen, and she helped me make biscuits and had gravy, and she's Grandpa's buddy now. All I got to do is have biscuits and gravy, and that girl is mine. So, you got to figure those things out. And, of course, we did have to read a few books, but it was a good time and relaxing. And then, of course, you come home, and then you realize, oh, no, I got to catch up. Because it rained. If it hadn't rained, God, thank you for the rain. But if it hadn't rained, I could have mowed yesterday and not had to worry about it the rest of the summer. But the way it was, and then the lady that mows the church that has 2 acres next to us, Church of Christ there, had asked me if I could take care of her yard, that yard too. So I I got out yesterday morning about 7:45, watered plants and started weed eating, mowing. I got in the house at 8:15 last night. So I had a full day outside. But somebody said, well, how does that, it's football coaches, because you practice at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's no big deal. But so I had a good time, but yesterday was definitely a labor day, if you will. Let's look at chapter 30 real quick, and let's look at the first part of it for just a moment. Now, I could ask a simple question and just say, in the first part of chapter 30, in the first 13 verses and so on, what in the world is going on? What is going on right here? 2 words. Huh? Sibling rivalry. Is there anything any worse? In some regards. And especially, now if they were kids, we could understand that. You know, big brothers, you know, and I'm going to do everything big brother does. You know, we've all seen that kind of stuff. But now then, these are supposed to be grown women, and it's still with sibling rivalry in this regard. I'm going to ask a question that I don't think I've ever heard asked before in this. Because these 2 sisters are after each other right here and so on, where's Jacob in this? Well said. Well said. But seriously, where is Jacob in this? Do we think that Jacob was having a good time? Having to deal with this, and then he goes into Rachel and it's like, give me kids. And it's like, been trying. Do we understand? You know, like I said, and that's what I've tried to do with this book of Genesis, is to understand these are real people. We want to set things on a pedestal, and it's like, no. God's just showing you what he does with what he's made. Did he create us? Yeah. Does he know what's going to happen? Yeah. Has he got a solution for it? Yeah. Are you patient enough to wait for the solution before you really mess things up? And that's where I want to go to with the next part. How did these 2 sisters treat Jacob? How did they treat him? All right? Now, I want to point out something else right here. And we'll notice this again. And once again, see, here's the deception of man. Because who did Jacob say he wanted as a wife? Rachel. Rachel was who he wanted. What did Laban do? Now, if anybody in here thinks that Laban was a good person, you and I need to sit and talk for a little bit after class today. Because what Laban's looking for is for himself. How long had Jacob worked for Laban? 7 years of free labor. Who for? Rachel. Who did he get? Leah. Now, think with me for just a moment. Because we always want to take Leah's side. Oh, poor Leah, she wasn't loved, she wasn't this. Did Jacob ever string her along? The answer to that is no. Leah, in this regard, was forced on Jacob. Deceptive-wise, because had he known it was Leah, I don't think that he would have went into her on the wedding night.
It was the father's selfishness that if I bring my daughters off to him for 14 years free labor, and now I don't have to be there.
There's also something else with that, and that's exactly right, Keith. But there's also something else with that. In the 7 years that Jacob has been working for Laban, y'all think with me, who's bringing that little flock of lambs to the watering trough? Rachel? Wasn't she the one she was a shepherdess and she's bringing, how many sheep did he have? Did he have to have shepherds, or was Rachel taking care of his flock? Think about it. How much did Laban have? Laban didn't have much, people. In fact, Laban recognizes that. But what had happened during this 7 years that Jacob had worked for Laban, had things begin to multiply and increase, so that he not only had flocks. He had herds, cattle, camels, donkeys. Things began to, what does Laban say? Who's responsible for this? Jacob. So, as Keith said then, he got another 7 years out of him. But I want you to go back to the idea of Jacob. Men, how would you feel if you didn't get the woman that you... I mean, think about that for just a moment. And yet we want to say, oh, she was unloved. She was it. Think about Jacob's response in this. Think about Jacob as a human being and his feelings in that regard. And so now then, we come down to verse 14 where we're going to start today. And I want you to look at something. If Jacob already didn't have a inferiority complex, or, thinking about himself, think about this. Now, in the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes. Well, what are mandrakes? You go back and you look this up. In a lot of the old cultures, the gods and so on thought that this was a fertility drug of some nature, that it helped with fertility. You had different things, and when you look at it, they say it's on the same thing as like a tomato or a potato. And the root part of it said if you pull the root up and so on, it looks kind of like a human form, and that's the reason why. So it went from here. So Reuben is out in the wheat harvest. Now, because see, we sometimes forget about some of this stuff as well. And I want you to think about something else. By the time that we're into this, how old is Jacob? How many years has Jacob been there? He's been there for a while now. I don't know if it's the end of the 14 yet, but it's close to the end of the 14 years. So Reuben, some of these boys are getting old, now, and they're in the field. Think with me for just a moment, because we talk about how we raise children these days. Let's compare how Abraham raised Ishmael and how Jacob is raising these boys. How old was Ishmael when he and Hagar were sent away? Somewhere around in the neighborhood of 16 or so. How old are these boys? And what are they doing? Compared to Ishmael, who went out there and sat under the bush and cried while his mama watched him, thinking he was going to... What are these boys doing? These boys are in the field. They're working. They're tending sheep. They're tending herds. They're tending harvest. I remember them days going out in October, gathering corn. Me and my older brother would take turns driving the wagon. You go down and back, and then, the other one gets to, and you'd be take 2 or 3 rows at a time. Of course, my dad would be taking 3 or 4 at a time as well. Tearing those ears off, throwing them in the wagon and everything. I mean, we've all been through harvest. Jerry might have picked. Did you ever pick any cotton, Jerry? How did he raise these boys here? Do we see a difference in this? Is there a difference in the way that we raise our children? Maybe. I think if we can't look at these examples and understand that, yeah, there's a big difference in what we do and the way we raise them and the outcomes of some of those things as we look at that. So when we look at this then, Reuben's out, he's in the harvest, and he brings in these mandrakes. Then Rachel said to Leah, Leah's had children, please give me some of your mandrakes. Remember we said that the custom was they thought that the mandrakes helped in fertility to give them so that she could conceive. But she said to her, is it a small matter for you to take my husband? Now think about what we just talked about. Who's claiming the man as her husband? Leah. Was Leah's name ever mentioned between Laban and Jacob when he was talking about getting a wife? And the answer is no. Sibling rivalry right here, huh? Oh, you took my husband. Well, wait a minute. See the conflict here? How does Jacob resolve that? He hides.
He comes in the field, from the field in the evening.
Yes.
At the morning, he's been gone all day.
That's what I'm talking about. Smart man. Because he goes to the field in the morning and comes home at night, and it's like, Lord, please. And guess who meets him as he's coming in from the field? Leah. You come with me because I just traded mandrakes for you. Now then, does that give you a complex? How important are you that you trade your being? He's being sold as goods. Am I wrong? What are these two doing? No, I get him. You give me the mandrakes and I get the man for the night. So we're just passing him around. Has he already been passed around? Well, yeah, because Zilpah, Bilhah, they've both had. And now then, no, you come to my team. They both had, hadn't they? And this comes to play a little bit later on. So it kind of gives you an understanding of this type of mentality where, except, now then, Mary, here's where it kind of differs. Usually, it's the woman that is sold as property. Just like Zilpah and Bilhah, what were they? What did they have to say about, hey, you go into him, he's coming into you tonight, you're going to have kids for me? Because they were property. So this idea, and Dad had 7 years, and Dad sold them off for 7 years of labor in that regard. So now then, what are they doing? Well, they're just bartering, trading. What would that do to your family? See, we can't even imagine that kind of a life, that would happen. That you and your sister share the same husband, and then because you can't have kids, you bring in a person who does your makeup and stuff and say, okay, you're going to have kids with her. And do we understand why that when Christ came, he started looking at the idea of one man, one woman, and commitment, the word commitment in that regard?
Very, yes. God has a plan, and it's genius, because he wants us to understand that it's not through our power and our goodness or our perfection, but through his perfection. And he takes the broken people, these imperfect people, Jacob that hides his head in the sand, and says, I have no control over this. They have 11 sons that are not going to leave the promised right. God finally acts and brings about the one that will. I mean, this is God taking the broken, the imperfect, and make it right.
God takes the imperfect and makes perfect. And so he takes this, but and he's using this, and that's a point that I want to make right here as we continue on with this, is how that, okay, so for mandrakes, Jacob gets, you go to that tent tonight. And I want you to look then at the time frame. What happens? Well, he goes in and she conceives again. Leah conceives again. And Leah has another son, which is named Issachar. Then she conceives again, Zebulun. And then it says she conceives and gives a daughter. Interesting. Why is this daughter mentioned? Because of the story that happens next. If we go to the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey might say, would have said, we're going to find out that this young lady is in the middle of a massacre, if you will. Okay? The other point that I want to make is, did Jacob go into Rachel in between all this? Because you got to look in this time frame. We're talking about 3 children. You're talking about 2.5 to 3 years. 2.5 years minimum, right? So I'm sure he went into Rachel, right? Rachel's been chewing on those mandrakes. What good did it do her? None. Because what does it say? That after Leah had given birth to these children, verse 22, then God remembered Rachel. Mandrakes didn't do any good. Who's got their hand on this? Who's got control? Who's playing this picture? Who's painting this picture right here? God is. God's got it. All the way. Because as human being, I wouldn't know how to fix that. Dr. Phil couldn't fix that family. But God knew what he was doing. And he said, I got it. Y'all just keep playing the part. I got it. Okay? And so God remembers Rachel and gave heed to her, and she conceived and bore a son. God has taken away my reproach. She named him Joseph, saying, may the Lord give me another son. Is she satisfied with one? Think about it. With Rebekah, how many children did Rebekah have, and how long did she have to wait? And she had one son. And Rachel finally gets a son, and what's she saying? Okay, may I have another? Are you thankful for the one that you have? And the answer is, I think that she was, no doubt. But immediately, what does she want? Want more. Is that human? Is that a human? Yeah. Because why? And here's the kicker. And this is, to me, the part that makes this, if there's a wrongness to this, this is the wrongness in it. Why does she want more? Huh? Because Leah had more. Leah's got that. This rivalry stuff has not gone away. Well, Leah's got 6 kids. Not only that, but Zilpah had 2, and Bilhah had 2, and I got 1 now. So how many sons does he have right now? 11. He's got 11 right now. Who's the youngest of these? You know, sometimes we get this confused. Joseph is not the youngest. Who's the son that comes later that is the youngest? Benjamin. That's right, Dana. Benjamin. So Benjamin's not here yet. But here's Joseph. Now, we look at the time frame once again, and I keep referring to that because I want us to look at something right here. How old was Jacob when he went to Laban and saw Rachel the first time? Remember, we calculated that, and he was about 50 or in his 50s. How old is he now? He's up in his, got to be close to 70. Maybe in his 70s. And so we look at this and we sometimes think that, well, now how much older was he than Leah and Rachel? I don't know. I don't think we're ever told that. I don't remember. I don't remember reading that in anything in there, so we're not sure about that. But we look at his age, and we know that he has to be in his 70s. And so it came about when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob says to Laban, now then, he's got his 11 sons. And this is when then he goes to Laban. Now here's where, this is guy stuff here. Okay? Working a deal. What's the important part of working a deal? There's two reasons why you don't trust someone. What's the first one? Two reasons. What's the first one? What's the first reason why you don't trust someone? You don't know them. You don't know them. What's the second reason why you don't trust them? You know them. Okay? So the two reasons why you don't trust people is because you don't know them, or the second reason is you know them. Does Jacob know Laban? Yeah, for 20 years he sees how this works. I mean, there's no doubt that Jacob has been thinking about this for a long time. Because you just don't, I could say something right here, it would upset some people, but it's just like all the businesses that have all of a sudden said they're going to spend all these billions of dollars in the United States and build these factories. How many of you really think that those decisions were made in the last 3 or 4 months? When you're talking about spending billions of dollars? Or has that deal been in the works for years and somebody's been working behind the scenes, whether he was in office or not, to make sure that stuff happened? Just saying, think about it. What's Jacob been doing all the time he's been working for Laban? Figuring some stuff out, right? This is the first example where we have genetic modification. People don't like to think about it, but it's like, yeah, Jacob been out there from dawn to dusk. Understandable reasons, as Anthony pointed out. And he's been observing, knowing what's going on. Which ones are more apt to be the stronger? Which ones are more apt to be the weaker? Which ones, as he's walking in these herds and these flocks and these donkeys and camels and everything, and which ones breed where and what? And so, in 20 years, I mean, my dad, we would winter about 40 head, and then in the summertime, sometimes we'd increase the herd up to about 100 and all that kind of stuff. And my dad had them all named. He could tell by looking at them, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I just knew the milk cow, Molly. Because me and her, I had the evenings, Dad had the mornings, and I had the evenings. And so, he's looking at these animals, and he's deciding which ones, how do I do this? Now, the other part about this is, he knows Laban. Does Laban change the rules? That's how he wound up with Leah, right? So he knows that Laban will change the rules in the middle of the game without telling you. I always tell people, I don't mind playing your game as long as I know the rules, but don't change the rules. If you know the rules, you can play the game, right? So Jacob has to think of a way not only to play the game, but also so that when the rules change, I can make sure that he can't change the rules. Think about that for just a moment. Steve Tibbles made me think of something before you leave right now, because this is something I didn't ask Gene. I was going to ask you about this earlier. On October the 5th, Sunday, October the 5th, I have to mention this, the Edmond Church of Christ is going to have their singing that they will put together for search program. And they have invited other congregations and so on. So I thought we might get a group from here. If we need to, we can take the van or something like that. So be thinking about that. I don't know exactly how all that works, but I know that it was in the search bulletin. They were talking about that. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So, huh? Oh, that's our, no, October. October 5. Yeah, October.
That's the search thing?
Yes, October 5 is a search thing. Yeah, right, in September there. But yeah, this is October. So Steve made me think of that, and I was going to say that a while ago. So what he does was, he says, okay, Laban, let's do this. He says, I want to leave, so send me away so that I may go to the place of my own country. Give me my wives. Is that a strange statement? Give me my wives? Didn't he work for them? And yet, who still apparently claims possession? Kind of a strange deal. Now, do you get the idea where Mary made that comment a while ago, where the girls would think of themselves as being sold and could be sold again? Because if Jacob takes off, Laban doesn't want him to go, is he going to take care of them, or will he sell them again? Think about it. So he asks if he can take his wives and his children, and let me depart, for you yourself know my service, which I have rendered. But Laban said to him, if now it pleases you, stay with me. I have divined. What does that word divined mean? Anthony, when we talk about that word divined, what does that mean?
I thought it out, I reasoned, I found.
Yeah, I kind of looked at this or whatever, and smart guy. Yeah, I looked at it before you got here, looked at it after you got here, and there's a difference. Took a genius to figure that out, right? Where you had one little flock that your daughter was taking care of, now you got herds and flocks, so that all your grandkids are out there taking care of those things. Stay with me. Lord has blessed me on your account. Now, is the Lord literally blessing Laban, or is he actually blessing Jacob because of what's getting ready to happen?
Collateral.
There you go. Rain falls on the just and the unjust. So in this regard, it was a cohesive effort that they both achieved right there. And so then he says, and he continued, name me your wages, and I will give it. But Jacob said to him, you yourself know how I have served you, and how your cattle have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased to a multitude. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also? So Laban has claimed everything. Jacob wants to be man of the house at the age of 70 plus and take care of his own family. And who says kids don't grow up? So he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. Why would Jacob say that? Hadn't he worked? Hadn't he been the one that's caused this? So why would Jacob say this?
What my cousin is, his term was, he's gonna work his parents, he's working later, he's working. He's gonna get out of him what he wants by approaching him in such manner.
Is that the case, or does he not want Laban to come back and say, that's all my stuff, I want it back? Yes, I made him, I gave you that, you didn't, and he could always come back and say, you didn't earn it, I gave you my daughters, I gave you the...
But he's working, he's getting to where he wants.
Yeah, now he's got him, he's doing the right thing because he's saying, because he knows that if I say, I want this, this, and this, then what you're gonna say, so now then, just let me put it this way. I don't want anything from you. I don't want you to give me anything, all right? But here's what we'll do. Let me pass through your entire flock today, removing from there every speckled and spotted sheep and every black one among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages. Why did he want the spotted and speckled and striped? Easily spotted right here. It's like, so we're going to just divide them in all the black lambs, and we're going to divide them. Now, what's interesting is when they did this, who went with the spotted and striped, and who went with them? Jacob's kids. Who stayed with Laban's flocks? Jacob. Seems strange? Why didn't Jacob's other sons, which we know he had, why didn't they take? Well, so Jacob's working his plan. If I go with these, then he can't say that I neglected and whatever. So I'll continue, because what has Laban himself said? Oh, I'm blessed because of you. Okay, then I'll continue to keep your flocks. And here's where the genetic stuff begins to make. And when we start looking at this, I read some things on these a couple of weeks ago, and it was talking about that the idea that, you can get some of the, making the stripes on the sticks, and it says that he put them in the water trough. And some of this was that because of the difference in it, it caused the sheep they would come up and they would look at that. Well, then this also talks about that, guess when the sheep were breeding? While they were at the water trough. Made it easier for the rams. Okay? And so now then, also then, he put these where the healthiest were. It's just like you go through here, oh, this was, yeah, I'd like to have breeding stock from this and so on. And you go here, and you're like, and so you begin to separate them. You put the sticks where those are, and you didn't where the others were, so that they made sure that they bred, and then the others over here were the lesser genetically, not as good genes in that regard. And so guess what you come up with then? Well, and then he puts this stick in the water, and there's something in the sap of some of these things that it talks about that could have caused, and I don't know how, and they don't, the one that I read, there had been 8 different studies in this regard, one of them in Australia, 7, I don't know if seemed like there was 1 in the United States, and the other 6 had taken place in the eastern countries and so on in this regard. And said that there is something to this idea, if you use the trees that they had there, that it could cause streaking in the coloration of them. So what was Jacob doing? Genetic modification in order to do what? Build his own herds, even though he's taking care of daddy-in-law's sheep. So this process continues, and we're not sure for how long, but I think that somewhere it talks about that this went on for like 3 years. And in this 3-year time frame with sheep, because their gestation period is shorter, you could build a pretty good flock of goats, sheep, and different animals. So Laban said, good, let it be according to your word. So he removed on that day the striped and spotted male goats and all the speckled and spotted female goats, every one with white in it, and all the black ones among the sheep, and gave them into the care of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white stripes in them, exposing the white which was in the rods. He set the rods which he had peeled in front of the flocks in the gutters, watering troughs. even in the watering troughs, where the flocks came to drink, and they mated when they came to drink. So the flocks mated by the rods, and the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Who's really in charge taking care of these, bringing forth striped?
God still got his hand in all of it.
Oh, thank you very much.
I mean,
God's got it.
you can look at science, you can look at DNA, you can have all kinds of hypotheses. God's still the one directing the outcome of all this.
That's exactly right, because in all the studies that it talked about, it said that there was some evidence, but that there was nothing that was conclusive, even though these studies, and they've been done in the last, I don't know how many years that they have been working on this and so on. So the bottom line is, who's responsible? God. God's taking care of Jacob. All right? And so it works this way. And so he put his own herds apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Moreover, when the stronger of the flock were mating, Jacob would place the rods in the side of the flock in the gutter so that they might mate by the rods. But when the flock was feeble, he did not put them there. So the feebler were Laban's and the stronger were Jacob's. So the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks and female and male servants. Not only was he taking care of sheep and increasing his herds there, but he was also increasing his herd of people in that regard, and camels and donkeys. So we'll start in chapter 31 next week. Thank you all.